Hey there, Balanced Lady Bosses. This is Stacey, and welcome to another epic of the Balanced Lady Boss Show. I'm so thrilled to be here with you guys. We're getting ready to head into what may be a busy season for a lot of parents like myself. It's back to school, and probably in the middle of that. We're also heading towards the end of the year. And for those of you who are in companies where, the end of the year is when it's crunch time, right? You have budgets that you have to be doing. You're working on your strategy. You're doing all of this business stuff, right? Maybe a very busy time coming up for you. Summer's getting ready to wind down and all the different things that happen. We're entering another season. Well, that happens to be the case for me too. So I'm in it to win it with all of you. And just over here, just looking forward to another conversation that is, of course, going to be epic. Now, today's discussion is really centered around the new program that I have been sharing with you guys that I'm launching, Fem Powered, which is really about supporting women in corporate. And I wanted to touch on why it's such an important time for us to be doing this work. And if you are a 9 to 5er, whether it is that you are in private sector or you're working with the government or you're working for a nonprofit, whatever it is, you have what people would consider a quote unquote regular job. Now, for many of you, you may also be familiar with the fact that I have been straddling both mentally and most recently with my sabbatical physically. I've been straddling this, stay in corporate, be entrepreneur, can you get your freedom, like all of those different things. And one of the bits of aha moments, I would say, one of the bits of ahas that I got while I was doing my sabbatical is how much support is lacking for women who are working in the 9 to 5 space. And when I say support, I know that there are a lot of conversations happening in terms of the efforts around diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure that women get seats at the top and pay equity, et cetera, et cetera. But there aren't enough programs that are really helping women to be successful when they get these opportunities. And I'm not talking about just the technical side of success, but all the other things that are required to really be a boss, to really own your space and own the room, just own all the stuff, right? So I'm making a few shifts or a few changes in just how I am positioning my leadership programs. And I've made a decision that I am curating a very special program for women in the working world. And that program is called Fem Powered. And the reason I'm doing it, guys, is for all the things I've said before, and also because the femme-powered woman, the woman that I'm talking to now, is me 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when I really didn't have the support that I needed to succeed in leadership. I was flying by the seat of my pants for half of it, right? And yes, I went off and I got training. I had my degrees, I had my MBA, I was a techie, so I understood all of this techie stuff. And, I was entering into spaces where I didn't know what to do. I just didn't know what to do. And then worse, there weren't a lot of other people like me looking back at me while I'm entering these new opportunities and sitting in these new roles, etc. So all of that to say, there is definitely a place for women who are looking for support. And that place is right here. Not just on the Balanced Lady Boss Show, but inside of Epic Transformation, where we are now creating something that is not just about leadership, because we do a lot of leadership work. We do a lot of strategy work and a lot of work around tech and entrepreneurship and all of that. This is specifically for you, the woman who I talk to every week on the show that is in leadership and is, managing all the different things, trying to balance all the different parts of your life. I have a program now for you, and I'm really excited about it. And today, you're going to understand why you need to be excited about it too. because we're going to talk about all the different areas of the program that are important for you to succeed, for you to create the quantum leaps in your success. Enough of this, you know, yeah, I know I'm good, but I don't think I'm ready for the C-suite, or the promotion opportunity came, but boy, I have the kids and I have to think about that. And, like we play small a lot. And when we're not playing small, when we're playing the big game, we burn out a lot, right? So, how do we navigate all of those things? How do we navigate a situation where we go to work and we have microaggressions coming at us, not just from a male perspective, or a race perspective, but from our own women, from the same gender. Sometimes, it's us women that are really creating challenges for each other, right? Because we're coming from a place of scarcity, or a scarcity mindset. So there's lots of different things that we're navigating that you don't have the tools for, and you don't have the tools for it, and you're struggling. I have so many conversations, guys, with women who are struggling. They look good, polished, right? They're successful. They may be earning bank. They may be making money, right? They may want more money, but they may be making money. They're taking care of their families. They're doing all the things. And yet, they are really like withering sunflowers when you go behind the scenes. Their minds are overactive. They're burning out more and more. They're thinking about leaving the job they have to go find another one because this one is giving them too much stress. And that ain't the answer, by the way. Not all the time, at least. Their relationships are suffering. They're constantly bickering with their spouses or love partners. Their kids hate them. Well, depends. If they're teenagers, they're going to, you may not luck out anyway. But you're struggling, right? And it's different types of struggles for different types of women. For some women, you're struggling with all of those things and you're holding it together. And you need help. And that's why we're here. So let's get to it, guys. So today's conversation is all about the three core areas that we focus on inside of the Fempowered program. So we have three core areas that we focus on, and then with those three areas, we give you the 6 pillars that you can use to create quantum leaps in your success. So first things first is that more times than not, your problems reside in one of these three areas or all three of these areas. And what I want to do today is to really help you to recognize where you may be having this challenge and not paying enough attention to it. Because that's another thing that we do really well. We cover up where we're having challenges. We cover up where the issues may lie. And so it's really something that we want to make sure that we are paying attention to and not just brushing it under the rug, because it is affecting you whether you are aware of it or not. Okay? So the 3 areas that we focus on in Fempowered are power, presence, and mental resilience, right? Not just any old resilience, specifically mental resilience. Because I have found through all the different things I've gone through in my career and the different conversations I have with other women who have boss roles, who are in the C-suite, either like in the C-suite like myself or just being boss otherwise. 3 things that I found that these are the areas that you really struggle with. And then also just clients that I've worked with in my coaching practice. 3 areas that they primarily struggle with are also here, right? So let's dive into that and really get clear on how you might be hurting, yearning, needing support, and then we'll make sure that you get connected to the different ways that you can be a part of this program. I'm so excited, guys. Like, you have absolutely no idea how excited I am. So let's get to it. All right. So the first of the 3 areas is Fem Power. What is Fempower? So I'm just making sure that I have my notes. What is Fempower? So what I like to do, guys, is I like to be very straightforward. I don't want to complicate the situation. Okay, because then it just make it harder for you to understand. Fem power is related to the things that we as women in leadership need to focus on to enhance our power. So, where I like to start, what is power? What is power? And power, the definition of power is the ability or capacity to do something or act in a particular way, right? So the ability or capacity to do something, ability or capacity to do something or act in a particular way. That's one. And then there's another definition that is also applicable to this situation. Power is also the capacity or ability to direct or influence the behavior of others or the course of events. So it's both your ability and capacity to do something, which is what I kind of like to call the competence or the technical side. You know, like, are you skilled at what you're doing? Do you know what you're doing, right? Like, do you have the competence to do the job, right? That's the first thing. And then the second piece is the influence piece, because power is very much about influence. And are you able to influence the behavior of others or the course of events? Are you able to actually influence the way that something unfolds? Okay? So in these two veins, that's where being fem powered, right? Being fem powered helps you with navigating these two areas. So the first of the two areas inside of power is your competence or your technical skill. So when I'm talking about competence and leadership competence and technical competence as a woman in a powerful role, it's not necessarily about whether or not you are a good accountant, because maybe you are a chief accountant, or maybe you are a company secretary or a chief legal officer, or possibly as a chief operating officer. Maybe you are a chief marketing officer, whatever your chief is, or maybe you're a VP of human resources, or senior manager of marketing, or whatever it is that is your role, right? You may have technical competency or technical skill that is behind that role. So you're good at your job, your work that you're supposed to do, the things that you're supposed to produce. So if you're responsible for the budgeting of the organization, your chief financial officer or chief accountant, then maybe that's what you're doing, is you're making sure that that financial aspect of things is on point, right? Possibly your CIO. Maybe you're a chief information officer, or CTO, chief technology officer, chief product officer. I'm using a lot of chiefs here. You chief of something, right? Or maybe you're not at a chief level yet. Maybe you're in middle management. Maybe you're a manager or a senior manager, and you're responsible for a particular discipline. Oftentimes, this is what you go to school for. This is where you go to school and they teach you how to, build a software program, or how to do product strategy, right? So you have the technical side of things. You get what I'm saying? I'm explaining a bit too much. You get what I'm saying? You understand the technical side of things. That's not necessarily the skill I'm talking about. First and foremost, I think it's irresponsible of you to be in a job where you have not either already gotten the skill or are on the path of getting that technical skill. Right? So that's your responsibility, just hands down. I think your basic level of 100% responsibility in any role is making sure that you actually have the capability, technical capability, to perform a duty. You're supposed to be doing marketing, make sure you go do the marketing thing. Okay? The skills I'm talking about are the other leadership skills that persons don't necessarily focus on a lot. It's how to delegate, how to negotiate, how to get a strategic plan done, how to get a goal setting done for yourself and for your team, how to prepare a budget if you're not financial in nature, right? So there are certain levels of competence that women need that they don't necessarily spend a lot of time focusing on, okay? And those types of technical skills now are where FemPowered come in. How to espouse your value set through the work that you're doing with your team. When you think about leadership, we don't often think about that. We oftentimes think, okay, so I got a promotion And a lot of times you get a promotion because you're delivering outcomes, because you're delivering on the things that are a part of your technical side, the technical part that you go to school for, the part that you may be excellent at. But how many of you know out there that you can be excellent at a technical thing? Hold up your hand if you know, if you drive and keep your hands on the wheel, but you get what I'm saying if you're watching this on YouTube. If you know that you are technically skilled, but truth be told, your team is in conflict and you don't know what to do about it. You're sending out emails for people to deliver things to you, and they're not turning around the deliverables. They're not holding their timelines to in integrity. And you can't figure out why, right? You have a disrespectful team member, maybe a male team member, who is clearly misogynistic, and you don't know how to handle it. And you're just like shoving it under the rug like it's not happening, right? So there's lots of different things that come under leadership competence that are not being paid attention to. And women, you are failing because of it. Let me just tell you straight, you're failing because of it. I know when I was failing because of it. I saw myself making mistakes. And not really sure of how to navigate it, predominantly around the team side, right? And so I had to go out and figure out what I was not doing and then come back into the organization a better leader. So there's that piece, there's a competence piece. Then let's talk a little bit about the influence side of power. Oh my goodness. The influence side of power is so critical. It's so critical. The influence side of power is all about your capacity as a woman in leadership to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone else. Do you realize how much power that is? That's one of the reasons why politicians become politicians, because they get to influence other people. They get to influence their character. They get to influence their development. They get to influence their behavior. Where do you think the power of the influencer came from? I'm talking about influencers that get paid money on social media to promote brands or to talk about different types of things that are critical, so to speak, critical in nature for somebody else's life. Maybe they're not even critical in nature for somebody else's life, but the influencer makes them think it is because they have power through their influential capability. And what I'm saying is I think there's a distinction that needs to be made, because some women don't even think about influence. But you are very influential when you are in a leadership position. When you have somebody else's paycheck as your responsibility, that in and of itself is influence. Because you are responsible for their ability to manage their livelihood. You may not take it on that you're responsible, but you are. They have their own responsibility, yes, but you are responsible as well. You're the one that's signing that check, whether you sign it digitally or just because you hired them, and you get what I'm saying, right? So a lot of us are not aware of our influence, how influential we are, or how uninfluential we are. Is uninfluential? I hope it's uninfluential. We're not aware of whether or not we have influence. We're not aware of whether or not people see us in our room and feel, oh crap, yeah, I need to make sure that I have due respect for this person because they're influential. They can determine whether or not I get access to something, or whether or not I'm able to network with a certain group of people. They influence whether or not I think about myself in a particular way, right? We don't often think about these things, guys. So if you are not present to your level of influence, then it's very difficult for you to actually lean into where you may want more of that. And having influence is something that is very powerful when you are in 9 to 5, when you're in the corporate world, right? So that's being femme-powered. When you're femme-powered, it's focusing on those two primary things: your competence as a leader in things that are not necessarily your technical discipline, and your influence as a leader, how you are able to affect the character development and behavior of other people. Now let's talk about being femme present. So we just talked about being femme powered, overarching, right? Now let's talk about being femme present. And this is actually probably my favorite of the three areas of focus, because I just don't think we pay enough attention to this. I don't think we pay enough attention to all the areas of presence. And when I talk about being present, let's start there. Let's talk about the definition of presence. Definition of presence is the state or act of existing, occurring, or being present. So being femme present is all about the state or fact of existing, occurring, or being present. Now, I know that sounds a little bit confusing, right? What does that mean? For me, it's self-awareness. Are you present now? Are you with me now? Are you listening to me now? Or are you thinking about all the other things that have to happen today? So when I think about being a present leader, things that come to mind first and foremost is self-awareness. That is a foundational pillar of presence. If you're not self-aware, you cannot be present. Period. If you're not self-aware, it's impossible to be present. Okay? Being anchored in this now moment. There are so many things distracting us and pulling our attention in different ways, and we're taking on different shapes and forms. Self-awareness is the first and foremost thing about being a present leader. And oftentimes we're not self-aware, and we don't want to become self-aware either. Talk the thing, Stacey, is true. Some of us do not want to be aware of ourselves and of how we are showing up or how we're being. Some of us don't want to. We just don't want to, right? Okay. Another way that you can talk about being a present leader is because you're practicing openness and curiosity. These are two of my favorite values. Being open and curious. What does it mean to be open and curious? It means that if somebody's coming at you about something that you don't necessarily like or agree with, you're not just going to dismiss it. You're going to open your mind to the possibility that, hey, maybe what this person is saying, there is some truth to it. I'm going to be curious and explore within myself what this means and what they're trying to say, right? So openness and curiosity is another facet of being a present leader. And of course, we cannot talk about being femme present or being a present leader without talking about the way that you look, right? So the way that someone looks is also related to presence. So if we're to go back to the definition of presence, it's two things that came up actually. If you Google it, definition of presence. It's the state or fact of existing, occurring, or being present, right? So being in this moment with you, one-to-one, present. And it's also the way that someone or something looks and the impression that you give to someone based on that look, right? So when we're talking or thinking about today, it's a little different than it was, say, 10 years ago. Or even if we do pre-pandemic, I would say even as early as 3 years ago, the conversation would not necessarily have been the same. The way that someone or something looks was just primarily in person. So you'd be thinking about, the way you dress, how you comb your hair, etc. Now we have to think about this hybrid existence, because we're not just existing in person, we're also existing virtually, like how you're receiving this video or how you're listening to this audio, right? So your virtual existence is also the way that it's your voice is being heard, the way you sound, the way you look in person, the way you look virtually on the different platforms. Okay? So one of the reasons why personal branding has become such a big deal is because your presence affects your influence. Did you get that? Your presence affects your influence. So branding and personal branding and the big buzz and talk about it, and all the different books and so forth that you would see coming out nowadays about personal branding, it's really because that is one, just one, guys, not the only, but it is one facet of how you are showing up in life, and that facet of your presence can affect your influence. And if you recall, influence is your capacity to have an effect on the character, development, or behavior of someone else. So when you think about it, it's really a critical intersection of things, because ultimately, the way that you look, the way that you sound, your presence affects your ability to lead others, especially if you are one of those leaders that's trying to develop other leaders. Some leaders who are autocratic in nature and are bullying their way through are not interested in trying to create other leaders. They're just interested in themselves, making sure that they look good, their voices are heard, and that they're getting things done. And there's a time and place for that type of leadership, I do believe so, but it doesn't necessarily serve everybody, and it doesn't necessarily develop other leaders, at least certainly not other present leaders, right? So that this hybrid existence has really shifted the way that we have to think about our presence. And truth be told, whether we like it or not, the way that we look does affect our levels of success many times. I need to do some scientific research around that in terms of the percentage of the times, because I do know that you have some persons who, maybe they're authors and nobody ever sees them, nobody knows what they look like, but they write these amazing books and they're very successful, etc., etc. But the rest of the world that has to go to work, and I'm talking to you ladies who are going into an office or are showing up on a screen, right? Whatever your job is, okay, maybe you work in a hospital